and branding and looking at the campaigns, the two major campaigns that were run. Christopher Granger joins us live from Sweden. Good morning, Chris. And of course, Chris is a digital marketing specialist, strategic advisor, and lecturer at the Arthur Lockjack School of Business. Good morning, Chris.
Morning, Lisa. How are you doing?
I am doing well and fine. Are you in Sweden?
I am Sweden,
Yeah.
and I can't come home very quickly
We know
until the
that.
borders reopen.
Yes, but you were here for a little bit, so I know that you're in touch with what's happening on the ground here.
Absolutely.
So give us I want to start with the campaigns first, and then of course we'll talk about some other issues that came up yesterday in the program. From a marketing perspective, what worked, what didn't work?
Okay, well, to frame the conversation in the marketing perspective, I want to use this framework called the conversion funnel, which really is very I guess sort of de facto in marketing and digital marketing right now. It looks at marketing from the perspective of awareness, consideration, and conversion. So we develop our marketing campaigns and our strategies along this trajectory of what tactics are we going to use to get people aware.
Mm-hmm.
And then once they're aware, what tactics are we going to use to have them consider our content a bit more deeply? And then once they've considered it, we want to take them further down the line of converting them. What tactics are we going to use to actually solidify their involvement in what we want them to do as the action associated with this marketing campaign?
Right.
So this particular election was very, very interesting because it was the first time I saw a set of tactics associated with all three levels executed really, really well. Mm-hmm. So, for example, remembering awareness, consideration, and conversion all the time. For example, on the UNC side, and of course, we're speaking about the two major political parties,
yes,
as evidenced in the results. On the UNC side, we saw quite a lot of awareness action happening. When you see awareness action, you get a lot of, there's radio, there's TV, but there was a lot of digital display advertising, mm-hmm. which is something that I think UNC did well in the local government elections last year, as well as in the general election this year. You saw quite a lot of repetition. So I'm pretty sure that their results came out, their responses or their reports rather, came out with quite a high number of impressions. Mm-hmm. A lot of people saw the UNC campaign through digital display media. Mm-hmm. And in fact, I think a lot of people saw it multiple times.
Yes.
So they might have used a geo-targeted approach to zoom in on Trinidad and Tobago population and get people to see these UNC ads, which breathed familiarity and it breathed great degrees of awareness. Mm-hmm. So we saw that happening. Then once we moved down into more of the consideration space, that's where we saw a lot more of the video content. And that I think there was quite a bit of controversy in the video content and whether it was positioned effectively. In addition to the video content, we saw some use of influencers. I think this the Trinidad movement
yes. Mm-hmm.
was well
on
involved.
Both sides. On both sides, you saw that. Yeah.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. I think there was a zest. That's something on the PNM side as well. But yes, for sure. So we saw where the UNC actively attempted to position themselves in a particular way through a lot of video content and the sort of influential material.
Yeah.
Now, we saw that on both sides. On the PNM side, before I get into the conversion part, on the PNM side, we saw this the radio campaign happening. Well, I did not see I can't say if they didn't execute it, but I didn't see any digital display advertising via Google Display Network on the PNM side, the way we saw it on UNC side. Yeah. So they really got a lot of their awareness from more of the traditional means. You saw mm-hmm. a lot of the awareness through the caravans, through the radio advertising. And what was interesting is their radio advertising utilized the symbolism of this golden pen, mm-hmm. which we saw permeate all the way down to the conversion part,
Right.
where, as we said, we saw similar things in the consideration part, but at the conversion part, which is something I really, as an academic and as a marketer, I have to say it was quite spectacular to see the use of Facebook, those profile images, where the voter population was equipped with these profile picture frames
Right.
to be able to declare their support for the PNM, and not only declare their support, but encourage others. Now, the way digital marketing and social media has changed the advertising landscape globally is that advertising used to be a one-way dialogue. Now, or one-way monologue. You speak, the brand speaks to the consumer from the radio, from the TV.
Yes.
But now the consumer is not only able to speak to the brand, but the consumer is able to speak to other consumers and be a part of the advertising campaign. And I think the PNM campaign really demonstrated an understanding, a deep understanding of how to utilize digital media in a way that allowed people to communicate with other people. So they were able to say, I'm going to vote. They were equipped rather with PNM paraphernalia online, PNM material, to be able to say, I'm going to vote for PNM. Who are you going to vote for? Here is my golden pen. Right. So that was something that I think really stood out this particular election, where we saw a really great use of the brand equipping the consumer to convert not only in the public domain, but to support the conversion of their communities. So this idea that a consumer is able to speak to other consumers was really well utilized.
Yeah. Well,
from
Chris,
a positioning standpoint, I feel like it was very clear that the UNC wanted to represent represent the brand in a very specific way, which we saw a lot of acting, those types of created commercial content.
I'm going to jump in here. I love the level of analysis. I'm going to jump in here because that we have a hard stop at 7 o'clock for the news, but I just wanted us to touch a bit on, we started yesterday talking about, a brand, and well, we know which brand we're talking about, that was so negatively impacted in terms of the racist comments that were made by a member of their team. And I wanted you to just give us a bit of ideas to how can a brand rebuild itself, rebuild the brand equity after a fallout of this magnitude. We have just about 2 minutes.
What we saw in the last couple of days is a display of the consumer base recognizing that their value system wasn't seeming to be in alignment with a brand whose value system they thought was one particular thing. So when you have a leader within an organization coming out and representing a value system that is a bit surprising, then the consumer population is equipped to push back against that brand. So what the brand really has to do, of course, we're looking at business and business continuity and not allowing a brand to roll over and die. What the brand really has to do is perpetuate an authentic and transparent campaign. I guess campaign is a light word, that really demonstrates a value system or rebuilds a value system that is in alignment with the consumer population that
All right, so what I'm going to do, Chris, I want to come back and find out how you plan to tell us how that can be done. So please stay on the line. I know you're in Sweden, 6 hours ahead, but stay on the line. We're going to take a break for the news and come back and continue the conversation with Christopher Grange. So if you missed it, go on to our Facebook page after the program. You can check it out. But Chris, you were talking about recovery after what we saw with one of the companies, 70 years in the business, but not just that particular company, but any company that had to recover from something of that magnitude. What are some of the steps, Chris?
Yeah, when we're talking about the relationship that a brand has with its consumers, it's really built on this shared sense of values. We agree. We have this sort of underlying agreement that you and I believe the same things. You and I share the same value system, and so I can trust, and that's a really important word, trust. I can trust that you are who you say you are. And then when we have a brand demonstrating a slip in that value system, or demonstrating that the value system is not really what I thought it was, then the brand has to move quickly. As Tennille Clark said yesterday, the brand has to really explore those 3 A's. Accept that we have had a shift in our relationship with the consumer. Acknowledge with the consumer that, all right, guys, we recognize that something was said that that is not in alignment with our value system, and we now have to affirm, or sort of authentically and powerfully take action to move forward. And so now we're talking about what sort of action can be taken in a space where a brand is damaged so big, because what we're looking at now is a sort of hemorrhage in every direction. You're seeing people are boycotting the brand, or brands supermarkets are pulling it from the shelves.
Right.
So it feels like
so what are the options to move forward?
And the organization, the organization has to now really realign itself with a set of values. So I think at this point, it's important to articulate those values. The very first thing that is important is that the brand needs to be very clear on, this is our value system. And if we found that there is an issue, if our values were not well aligned, then we have to embark upon what is called a strategic rebrand, which is really a relook at our values. And what's important is that we do this in a transparent manner, so that the consumer population recognizes that the brand sees the fault and then takes some very major action. In many cases, you would see an option like the leadership of the organization championing the movement of the value system. This isn't something that can be championed by a PR officer or a marketing manager. It has to be something that is championed at the very helm of the organization. And if we find that the leadership of the organization, himself or herself, is not a strong representation of the new movement of that value system, sometimes you see the leadership step down.
Right.
Sometimes you see an organization switch out its board. Sometimes you see the organization switch out its CEO, so that we can now have a pillar of new representation for this value system. Sometimes if that doesn't work, because especially in family businesses where you're looking at, and we have a lot of those in Trinidad and Tobago, you're looking at a value system that is intermingled between the business culture and the family situation. Sometimes you may even want to go as far as, in order to stop the hemorrhaging, let's begin to sell the assets to another manufacturer who is going to be able to champion the value system entirely, which might allow the business owner to maintain some degree of revenue or maintain some degree of profit share, and still allow the assets of the business to continue to generate revenue.
As a going concern.
It's not really just losing market share and you've lost everything. Sorry, what was that, Lisa?
No, so that the brand continues, but under a new management.
Yeah, exactly. And you see that happening quite a lot in those Silicon Valley organizations. You see people switching out their CEOs. Even in state enterprises here in Trinidad and Tobago, you see boards being removed completely to represent a new direction. And what is really important in that relationship with consumers is that authenticity, that transparency, to allow the consumer base to see that we're making real moves toward trying to align ourselves to have and reestablish our relationship with you. And why is that so important? Because we've seen how powerful social media is. We've seen that as a tool, social media is something that has allowed consumers to not only express their grouses to the brand itself, they've gone and expressed their grouses to the brand's distributors. They've gone and expressed their grouses to their own consumer base. So consumers are now going on social media and asking other consumers to stop using this brand. This is something that is really characteristic of this decade. It's something that's really characteristic of what's happening in 2020. So the management practices of the 1990s and even the early 2000s are no longer applicable when we're speaking about a socio-technological environment where the consumer really has the power. And Chris, cannot skirt that. We cannot skirt how valuable it is to have the consumer involved in this process of realigning your brand with new values, or demonstrating that, in fact, this is not our value system. It is not, and despite the words of this particular brand representative, we are going to do everything we can. And when I say everything we can, I'm talking for everything from switching out leadership, switching out marketing campaigns, switching out prioritization of your dollars. And sometimes you might see things switching out packaging, switching out management. And I heard the conversation about management representation, representation at the board level. Are we examining the organization transparently to see if we really have a problem? Do we have a problem? And if we do, how are we going to fix that problem?
Is that going to what, Chris? I think this is a good yardstick for not just this company, but many companies, as you just indicated, that the environment, the landscape has so vastly changed that it's a measurement that other companies can test. You know, they say when your neighbor house on fire, throw water on yours, to really look at what are the policies that we have in place in other companies to ensure that an incident like this does not occur, or even if it, or should it occur, we have the mechanism to recover. We're going to have to leave it there, Christopher Granger. I feel like we can chat, you know, all morning about this and so many other issues. It's a good case study. It is a good conversation. All right, be safe out there in Sweden, but we're going to have to leave it there. We'll probably check you back next week and see how he's going and give us an update, because, you know, Sweden, if we talk about COVID-19 now, Sweden took a completely different route where they left it up to their citizens.
Natural selection.
Voluntary. Yeah, I think they were looking at herd immunity, and, you know, people are out in their numbers, and only if you're over a certain age that you stay indoors, and, you know, wow, completely different.